So welcome, Mike, to the Satellite and New Space Matters podcast. Your hosts today are myself, Millie Hall, and Tom Wilding from Nuco's Satellite and Space team. We are delighted to be joined by Mike-Alec Kearney, co-founder and CEO of CubeSpace Satellite Systems. Under his leadership, CubeSpace has quickly become a disruptor in the new space market, providing solutions to government agencies, high-tech R&D organizations, and commercial leaders focused on establishing reliable constellation-backed services, most known for their turnkey ADCS satellite subsystems and advanced production capabilities. Mike founded CubeSpace straight out of university and has grown the business over 10 years into a globally recognized multi-million-dollar company that is a leader in the field of satellite control systems. Welcome to the show again, Mike. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thanks, mate.
Today,
did Lee, our head of sales and marketing, write that intro?
She did. You happy with it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. She's great.
Good. And of course, today we'll be talking about all things you, people, and the new space industry. To get us started, we do always start with the same question. How did you first get into the space industry?
I did my master's. So I studied electronic engineering originally, and then I wanted to do a master's with kind of a focus on control systems. Control systems was one of my favorite subjects. It's a nice mix of mathematics and physics, which have always had a great passion for. I originally wanted to study mathematics, but I decided I want to do something that I can make a bit more money from and not end up at a university. Anyway, so I was looking for, originally I wanted to do something in the biomedical field. I felt like I wanted to become a doctor originally as well, but I have a terrible memory. So I can't study things. I wasn't able to remember anything that's required for being a doctor. So I thought, let me use my mathematical and physics skills to build something for the medical industry. And at that time at Stellenbosch, there wasn't much available in that direction, like good research topics. So that was the direction I was going. And then this opportunity came about to do a master's in research on control systems for satellites, for CubeSats at that time. So I jumped on that. It sounded super interesting. And at that time, I was already a little bit of a space enthusiast and kind of, followed what was going on. And I was super into astronomy and that kind of stuff. So this really intrigued me. And then I did my master's in control system for two CubeSats that you launch into space, and they split with a long wire in between. Super interesting physics and stuff. And then when I was near the end of my master's, I competed in a satellite design competition in Japan. Our team competed, and then I went to Japan and presented there, and we won the student prize there. And that just further gave me a bit of exposure to the international satellite industry, and now it is at conferences and things like that. And that really got me excited further. And then near the end of my master's, there was an opportunity for us to build control systems as part of a collaborative project between Stellenbosch University and a university in UK. Space Center. To kind of deliver on what we needed to do on that project, I then stayed on after my master's as a researcher to take some of the research that was done at the university over the last 10, 20 years and then turn that into a product. And that's kind of how it led into the creation of CubeSpace. So it's spun out of the university. I ended up in space kind of by chance. I've never had a job outside of. I studied and then started this, and that's all I've ever done. I needed a CV the other day, and for like an application for something, and I literally had nothing. So I had like what I studied, and I was like CubeSpace, and then I just added big pictures on the page, basically.
Smart, yeah. Fill in the gaps. It's really interesting because so many people move into the space industry having always wanted to be in the space sector, and you talk about your decision to take that path, looking at it from quite a business perspective early on, albeit with some foundation in a natural interest for the area. You mentioned as well that experience of those competitions, those academic competitions in Japan, which must have been a hell of a time and a lot of fun. What was the moment with which you thought, oh, actually, there is an opportunity here for me to found something that could, give me a career, give me a journey, give me something to really put my all into?
It's interesting. I kind of still have that mindset. I'm not someone that thinks that's driven and proactively think about what I want to achieve in terms of career or in terms of finances or that kind of thing. I just really when there's a problem in front of me, I kind of have to solve it. I'm obsessive about solving whatever problem is in front of me. And in those early years, that conference in Japan, and then after building those first control systems, I went to a conference in Switzerland, and that's basically the first conference where we could. So we built those first systems for this collaborative project, and delivered them. And then I went to this conference to kind of see what's going on in the industry and kind of just go and see which companies or which universities are using the system that we built and stuff. And I kind of, before that, we built a website in Microsoft Wix and made some brochures in Microsoft Word, super primitive, just word art, title on the page and some pictures we took with a very bad phone and stuff. We went to this conference thinking, there might be opportunity to sell more of these things. And getting to this conference, I just saw so many people talking about building their first satellite. They were just, everyone was starting to build CubeSats. Everyone wanted to build a satellite. But the thing that I heard everywhere was they don't have a control system, or they don't know what to do with the control system, or they tried and it failed. And at that time, there just weren't any off-the-shelf control system suppliers. So the need was overwhelmingly obvious. We had this thing that we did for this first part for this QB50 project. It was a research project led by a Belgian company that was in partnership with Surrey. We delivered these control systems for this project. But it was just very obvious then that we had something that everyone needed. It still needed a lot of work to really get to a product that we can sell. But we then just tackled that problem. At that point, they had no idea of what it could be in terms of a business or how big we could grow it. 1 year after that, I even thought, I want to study more, and we. I did a master's in mechanical engineering as well, part-time, thinking, I need to expand my technical knowledge and whatever, and not at all, having no idea of what the business could be.
You must have done something bad in the past life, because that's you like a challenge.
Yeah, but the point is, it was just obvious. There were obvious problems, one after the other, and that just I just kept focusing on solving that problems, and it just kind of one thing led to another, and it became obvious what the next steps were. We never sat down and said, okay, we are going to build this very successful large business. It was, what's the next thing we need to do in this obvious path? And there were just so many situations where we were just at the right time, right place, without even intending to be there. But just really working super hard all the time at solving the problem.
Yeah, I guess when that need is there, that's kind of the driving force to keep going with it. What would you say from, your experience with CubeSpace? What are those biggest challenges that you've had to overcome as a founder, and how has that shaped where you are today and how you lead the business today?
Interesting. So when you we spun out of the university, right? We started this company out of university 10 years ago. So that means there was a professor. So the professor that was my study leader for my research, and there was played a pivotal part in the first order, and then in the core technology that we still use. He's one of the leading ADCS guys globally. He's incredibly smart and has got so much experience in the space industry. So there was the professor and then a whole lot of students that finished their studies with me, or a year later or 2 years later, as we kind of built those first products in the first few years, became part of this journey. And when we spun out the company, it was like, who's going to own the shares, right? And everyone got little bits of shares. Everyone that was involved at that time got little bits of shares. And everyone was just focused on the technical stuff. And then I needed to start picking up all the legal stuff and the commercial stuff and the sales and marketing and those things. But at that point, a lot of people got shares. And as we then started growing, managing that shareholder group, which consists of 5, 6, 7 students effectively, that has no business experience, that has no idea of where this thing is going or what's normal, how you should behave in a shareholder meeting or in a board meeting, or how to build a management structure within the company. And then also me just being a student just out of university, having absolutely no idea how this works and or how to manage people properly. At that point, we just finished our engineering degree, so we all knew everything. So managing that in the early days, and then having guys being engineers working in the company, but then we have a board meeting or a shareholder meeting, and then they're shareholders, and then management issues coming into shareholder meeting and board meetings, and it was just super, super complex managing the shareholder group and the board and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was one of my biggest challenges in the early days. Building the product and selling the product and that kind of stuff, we could all manage. We had great engineers. I was leading the sales at that point, and everything was working. But the top management and shareholding group, managing that in the early days was probably the most difficult thing. And the skills I learned through that was just being able to better put myself in other people's shoes. Instead of being frustrated with them or feeling like they're unreasonable, understanding where they come from. They also have a share in this company, but they're working as an engineer. They don't have the inputs into management and the control that I have, but they're also dependent on the success of the company. So that is a difficult position to be in. And instead of feeling they're unreasonable to want to co-manage this company in a shareholder meeting, giving them the opportunity to give their inputs, and then whether you do everything that's suggested or not is not the point. It's hearing them out and stuff. So that people management side and really being able to better relate with people, learn to better care for people in high pressure situations and stuff like that. That's been the most key skill that I've learned in the last 10 years. The thing I'm most thankful for is actually the personal growth, in my communication skills and like kind of my understanding of people and management experience and stuff. It's been the most valuable thing.
How did you overcome that challenge? Because, it's familiar. And I think to myself and Millie, probably herself, coming straight out of university, it is a really big juncture in your life. How did you, having been thrown into so much responsibility and things that were so unfamiliar, how did you overcome those?
Through a lot of grit. I mean, I went through really tough times at some point with like being completely burned out and stressed and a stomach ulcer and like just a whole lot of personal things and like just sticking with it and, a lot of grit. It's not easy. I don't think there's an easy recipe there. But ultimately it came down to kind of having to go through so much pain and struggle that you get to the point where you really start just reevaluating whether you're fundamentally doing something wrong, and you need to kind of start questioning your own virtues and really try and understand what everyone is feeling. And as soon as I started doing that, I started understanding everyone around me a lot better. And it's one of those things where it's like a thing that clicks. Once it clicks, then it's easy. It's like I just suddenly realized what's necessary to be able to manage this group, and to align everyone and to make everyone feel respected and heard and get them to also start trusting me. It's building trust, right? It's building like kind of vulnerability-based trust with that group. And I think that's the core to any situation where you need a group of people to work together, whether it's shareholders or whether it's your team at work or it's a sports team or whether it's in your partnership with your partner at home. I think with your kids, the core is building trust, that kind of vulnerability-based trust. I love Patrick Lencioni's books. So Ideal Team Player is one of the things that we kind of use in our company as a kind of cultural guideline. But it's really learning how to efficiently communicate and really caring for the people around you and making them actually feel the care that you feel for them. Sometimes you care for people, but they don't actually feel it. They don't actually understand because you're not communicating it correctly. So just like properly caring and being able to be vulnerable. I think in those situations, instead of me being the CEO trying to control this meeting, is, being able, telling them, shit, guys, like this. Sorry, this is a podcast. I can't swear, right?
Unacceptable.
I think it's
okay. So just going, guys, I mean, I also don't know how to do this. This is also my first time doing this. I am in this position and I need to make this work. I also don't know how to do it. These are the things that I'm experiencing. It's super difficult having this conversation because I need to put two hats on and just like being vulnerable and acknowledging the problems and acknowledging your own limitations and stuff. Boom, that changes the whole conversation. Suddenly no one's defensive. Suddenly it's not a fight. It's a collaborative thing, So yeah, it's like those little subtle people skills that you learn. And it's not a strategically manipulative thing. It's not like a tool that you're using to manage people. It's a genuine thing, but it's something you need to learn to do because it's a crucial skill to be able to manage people. I mean, you can be I want to say Elon Musk or someone that's a bit more, I mean, I don't want to bash the guy, I don't know him, but someone that's a bit more forceful and a bit more aggressive and like kind of, it's a different leadership style. But personally, I feel like a more caring kind of servant leadership style breeds a lot more sustainable partnerships and teamwork.
Definitely.
And
just having those. Yeah. You've then got a team that can all work together and come to each other with problems and be honest. Was there any specific advice that you've sort of received in your career that helped you get to that point or that you've really taken on board? I know you mentioned that book earlier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've my coach, my business coach, Mike Smith. So we met each other playing squash together. Squash is, I think, racquetball in the UK. I don't know. So when we were younger, and we met each other there, and at some point they started working together. And he's played a key role in asking me the right questions at the right time and kind of forcing me to just question my own virtue. And he was always semi-involved with the company as well. He was my coach, but I also had him involved, so he could monitor and see, and he could see the interactions, and he could then help me understand them a bit better. So I really think having a coach or just an external party that can objectively look at your environment and your relationships, and then that you give the permission to kind of be candid with you, I think is key to keep you in check and to help you see your blind spots and stuff. And then, so Patrick Lencioni's books. The one other book that really made a huge impression on me was, I think it was called The Outward Mindset. I think it's a follow-up book on or leadership and self-deception and the outward mindset. Those are like the kind of follow-up books on each other. But the whole idea of that thing was kind of getting yourself it comes down to in any relationship, we automatically default to this mode where we blame others. We kind of inflate our own virtues and break down theirs. If I do something wrong, it's because of my situation. If you do something wrong, it's because of your personality or your character or right? If you drive down on the highway, where there's a name for this, but if you drive on the highway and you go like super fast and whatever because you need to get there, it's because you need to get somewhere. If someone else drives super fast past you on the highway, you think that guy's reckless. He's driving like he thinks he's better than anyone else. The one is because of your situation. The other one is because of the person's personality. And we all go into that mode with the people around us. And then that book just makes you aware of that. And the bottom line of that whole book was basically to get out of that mode, you just have to want to get out of it. That's the key. Wanting to get out of it makes you get out of it. Wanting to care, wanting to understand, wanting to see the other person's perspective, whatever, automatically gets you out of it. And so it's a very subtle thing. Like it's you miss it so quickly again. You just get in a situation where you're under pressure, and then suddenly you start prioritizing your own needs instead of the needs of the people around you. But yeah, just treating people around you as people with needs and feelings instead of objects. You're trying to achieve something. That really made a huge impression on me, and it formed the basis of my leadership style and communication style, and I think the culture at our company. Everyone here, we work just because you're nice and caring doesn't mean you don't work hard. It doesn't mean you're not ambitious. So everyone works super hard. We're trying to do crazy stuff. We work like very long hours, and sometimes we get super frustrated with each other. We're not always, we're definitely not saints, and we do fight a lot. But fundamentally, we all agree that we're spending most of our lives at work. You spend more time here than at home. And we want it to be enjoyable, and we want genuine relationships with each other where we care for each other.
You make a good point, and we touch on it every time we talk to a business, helping them hire. Jobs are so significant. You do spend more time there than you do with most people, especially friends, sometimes partner. So it's important that you find somewhere that echoes how you feel about, how you want to carry yourself. I really want to jump into your thoughts on the industry, and one of the big focuses and topics that we've seen discussed and in conversation, particularly over the course of this week at the Space Tech Expo show, has been the vertical integration within the satellite supply chain. Lots of companies are shifting to a fully in-house model, through merger, acquisition, or whatever it may be, to try and reduce that supplier dependency. What is CubeSpace's position? Where do you position yourself within that debate?
Yeah. Well, we've seen this evolution of the industry over the last 10 years. Early on, we actually had multiple companies that started with using our system and then started verticalizing, and then a year or two or three later started buying our system again. Our whole strategy and mindset there is to just build a product that is that good and a service that is that comprehensive at a price where it makes sense, it makes the customer's business model work, that it doesn't make sense to verticalize. You don't see Dell and HP and every computer manufacturer build their own processors, or their own graphics cards. You've got someone that specializes in that puts all their time and all their effort and all their focus into making something exceptional and becoming like the technological leaders in that specific field. It just makes a lot more sense to use them, to buy from them, than to do it yourself. So I think we just position ourselves as and our service in such a way that it doesn't make sense. And I mean, the typical pain points of wanting to verticalize is, wanting to have a certain amount of control and control over the control system, having a price point that makes sense for your business, having like customizability and flexibility. So and with control systems, that typically used to be an issue. But what we do is our system is designed in a way where we've got a wide range of components that we can pick from. And our base computer that forms the basis of the control system is fully customizable in electronic and mechanical interface and in harnessing. We can either use our system, our components, our sensors and actuators, or we can integrate third-party stuff. So we're not one of those companies that we don't want to use other people's stuff. We have a star tracker, but then if there's a customer has a specific requirement that requires a different star tracker, we go buy that star tracker from another company or competitor in a certain way and integrate that into our system and then provide the system to the customer. So we work actively with 3 or 4 of our biggest competitors, integrating their stuff into our system and selling that to the customer. Because our goal is solving the customer's problem. Like, we position ourselves as kind of an outsourced control system team. And so you need that customizability. But you also, people building satellites also they want a certain amount of control, because if they don't have that capability and control in-house, it's a risk for them to use a third party, because the control system is such a key part of the satellite. So to address that, we provide quite extensive commissioning support. So once you get in orbit, you've got someone dedicated on the site that you can ask questions for. But we also send people to our customers if they're going through commissioning. So let's say they're launching now, they've got a big satellite launch and it's a very important mission. We'll send someone to go and sit with them and go through the commissioning process, or have them available remotely. And then we also developed a simulation program that allows the customer to firstly simulate their entire satellite on the ground, but then also once it's in orbit, is able to simulate scenarios, to have a full digital twin of our system, and to be able to build a digital twin of their satellite, so that they can de-risk things. Once they get up there and they experience a certain behavior, they can simulate on the ground and understand it properly. And if they need support, they ask us and we give it to them. And for all the kind of consultation in designing a system for a customer satellite, in this support post service, for all of those things, we don't charge any money. If you use our control system, we're your control system team. So we don't charge like a whole lot of consultation fees. We just help people to make things successful. I think we've set up the service and the product in such a way that we address those key concerns that customers typically have with not being vertical. The last line is price, and if obviously the components you build a satellite or a control system with, the electronic chips and the PCBs and stuff, those things are cheap relative to the cost of a system, because there's a lot of R&D that goes in it, and it's complex processes and equipment and those kind of things. But we've really tried to position ourselves at a price point where it also makes sense to not verticalize and rather outsource it. Yeah. So, we're about half the price of our EU competitors in most cases, and third of our US competitors. And we do that now so that we can build our business to be sustainable at that price point, and to be able to help make our customers' businesses sustainable from a commercial perspective. So, the other topic that I think is very relevant. Sorry, I'm just doing all like monologue.
No, ears are fully open, and there's some themes within that, aren't there?
And the other topic that I think is very relevant to this conversation is just the idea of shared flight heritage. So if you have 10 companies, each building their own control system, and each launching 10 satellites a year, after a year, those 10 companies will have a control system with 10 flights worth of flight heritage, right? And they'll have the learnings and the maturity of 10 flights. And we all know that in the space industry, flight heritage is so important, especially on a control system, because a power system and a comm system you can test on the ground, but a control system you have to fly. It needs to be in orbit, seeing the sun, seeing the earth, seeing the stars, like floating in space, to actually test the control system. So if those 10 companies were to have all used an outsourced supplier, they all would have had, by the end of year one, a control system that has 100 flights worth of experience and learnings. They would gain the learnings of all the other satellites and all the other suppliers. And that's ultimately what we're doing. We've got 10 years worth of experience, full control systems for 400 plus satellites, 4,000 or 5,000 components delivered to customers. And all of that learnings have been incorporated in our device. So you're getting something with so much maturity and so much flight heritage, and exponentially gaining it quicker and quicker as we supply to more. wanting to do that you're on your own and making the mistakes yourself and slowly learning the lessons yourself just doesn't make sense.
A few things there, a few themes. Treating yourself like an outsourced partner rather than a sort of product off the shelf. And then additionally, a real focus on not just being a product and providing service associated with that product, meaning that your value add is so much more significant. I'd love to understand the secret sauce around how you can, price yourselves at the position you do, but I also recognize that that's a fairly valuable secret sauce. And I want to talk about your European expansion, because congratulations, you opened or announced your European headquarters at the Space Tech Expo show in Bremen, in Ireland. Where does expanding into Europe fit within your broader strategy as a business?
Well, our goal is really to become a global company that can most effectively solve the control system problem of anyone building a satellite. So no matter where they are, no matter how they're funded, whether it's government funding or commercial funding, and no matter the size of the satellite. So, this in terms of the size of the satellite, we already expanded our product range now to kind of be able to serve anything from a tiny CubeSat to a 1-ton satellite. And we've got the capabilities to do something that's lower cost and coarse pointing to something that's for the highest possible precision optics systems. So we've already addressed that concern. In terms of being able to supply to everyone that needs a control system, we're often, especially when funding is government backed, in EU, satellite suppliers are then under pressure to buy EU, and they can't always buy whatever they want. They kind of have to buy in EU, and the same for the US. So we want to have a made in EU product that can service all of those missions and never have someone having a limitation, in access to the right control system, because we're not EU, and the same for the US. And then also that whole concept of us being an extension of our customers' teams and really being available for support and being able to quickly and urgently support them. Because I don't know if you've ever been involved with a satellite program, but when that satellite's up in the air and you're expecting the first communications from the satellite, it's tense. And you have like a very short flyover where the satellite's got communication visibility or line of sight with your antennas. And then you maybe have another pass like 90 minutes later, and then it's hours before you have a pass again, if you have one ground station, of course. But it's tense. It's high pressure and it's tense. And then you want quick support. So we want to get closer to our customers. We want people in the US in the same time zone. We want people in EU close to our customers. If we ever need to do a site visit, it's an hour or two's flight and we can get to you. So the goal is really just to be closer to our customers, to be able to give a better service, and to be able to service them quicker. But then also, as I mentioned, to have that locally manufactured product, so that they don't have any limitations on being able to buy from us. And then, simplifying logistics for them. So suddenly it's not an import anymore. It's already in the EU and it's just shipping within the EU. So import, export, and licensing and export control and all those things become easier.
Yeah. It's clear that you're obviously very customer driven as a business, which is always nice to hear. And specifically for us, we love to hear about people in the industry. And so keen to find out a bit about your kind of talent approach and how that works. I know we touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of your kind of structure within the business. But what we'd be interested to hear about a little bit more, obviously the landscape is always evolving and changing. Do you notice any sort of key talent challenges facing the sector right now, or perhaps that you've encountered in the expansion or growing your team so far?
Yeah. So we're kind of growing our team responsibly. I think your comment on being customer focused, it's kind of core to the business in the sense that we never took any investment. So we spun the company out of the university. And when we spun out, that first project we had gave us a little bit of cash. We then hired a couple of people. Went to the conference, and that Microsoft Word brochure sold another system or two, and we got a little bit more cash, and we could hire kind of a second or third person. And over the last 10 years, we bootstrapped building this company. We made sales and used that sales to expand and hire more people. So we never got investment. We never got a chunk of cash that we can spend how we wanted to spend. Every year, we needed to be laser focused on what our customers need, because we needed to make sales to be able to pay salaries and to grow our team. So our entire focus has always been and still is what the customer needs, so that we can grow the business. And I think that kind of is core. It became part of our DNA. I so often see businesses that start with a lot of VC money that just they don't know how to control their spending, and they're unfocused and stuff, because they're building for their investors. They're not building for their customers. So yeah, that mindset is kind of very core. So we're growing the team responsibly to make sure that we create a business that stays focused, and where we have a culture that is unified, where you don't start getting these segmented kind of siloed subcultures in your business, where you just hire a crap load of people and it goes crazy. And where we can responsibly and slowly, in a structured way, build out the management structure as well. So, in the early days, I so often went to conferences, and I hear people they brag about how big their business is. If you ask someone, how big is your business, they tell me how many people they have and like how many people they've hired. I always bragged about how like compact we've been able to keep the company and lean we've been able to keep the company. For me, it's about finding the right people. And with the right people, I don't necessarily mean the most clever people or the most skilled people, but the right people in terms of the culture, in terms of the mentality, people that are hungry, but people that are humble, and the people that understand how important people are and that can communicate well. So we don't have huge talent demands. It's not like we're hiring tens or 50 or hundreds of people. It's literally like handfuls a year that we add to the team.
It's really pleasing to hear you talk like that, and that sounds counterintuitive for a recruitment business. But the times of hiring headcount for the sake of headcount have gone, and they should have gone, because the challenges that has brought the industry, having to go through such significant layoffs off the back of bringing in people is detrimental long term. So for businesses, to hiring more strategically and more responsibly, suits an approach to recruitment that is more focused on understanding a business's needs, whether that be technical or personality wise, or some blend in between. So I'm pleased to hear you talking proudly of operating like that, because like I say, if a business thinks, like you summed it up perfectly, how big is your business? Well, this many people. Actually, how big is your business? Well, it's revenue, it's customers, it's retention, it's whatever it might be. So you should be proud of it.
Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And you've built a brilliant reputation for having a highly motivated and people-led team. How do you keep that spirit alive as the company grows and you add more people in? Obviously, I guess through that steady growth. But is there anything specific that you look for when, implementing this into your strategy?
Yeah, I think hiring the right people. I've seen how the wrong person can actually really, really upset a very good team. There's the typical image of like a rotten apple, or kind of a bad spot that just spreads. It's crazy how bringing someone with the wrong mindset and a bad attitude into a business can really spread and just upset so many things. So it's being very careful with who we hire. So I'm still in the interviewing every person that we hire. We're like, I don't know, I think 70, 80 people now. And we're growing at like 5 people or so a year. That's kind of the rate it's still manageable for me to be able to be involved with every interview and stuff. So I make absolutely sure that we pick the right people. And then if you're, one of the things that we do is, for instance, part of the performance management system that we have in place in terms of how people earn their bonuses. We give them really great bonuses. So we've got a good variable structure. So if the company does well, firstly, if we reach our targets, the better the company does, the bigger bonus everyone can earn. So everyone shares in the spoils if the company does well. How much of that bonus you then get depends on your individual performance. So your bonus is influenced by how well the company did and how well you did. But that can be huge. Like, we set ambitious targets. If we reach it, you can get a huge bonus. Everyone, straight through, from like lowest level, they all have the same structure. Even the exco, everyone has exactly the same bonus structure. It's just how much of that bonus you get is obviously scaled with your salary. So, but how much of that bonus you get depends on what you need to do to contribute in the business. And one of the things that you need to do is contribute positively to the culture. So 50% of how much of your bonus you get is due to OKRs and like outputs and stuff. And the other 50% is a cultural score. What does your manager think of you? What does your peers think of you in terms of being a good team player? If you're not a good team player, you get a smaller bonus. If you're a great team player, you get a bigger bonus. It's as simple as that. And that's,
I love the fact
one
that's so
mechanism.
ingrained in. That's it's directly ingrained in something as important as salary to people is culture. It's not a negotiable.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is that obviously cash doesn't. I've learned that very early. If people don't earn enough, it demotivates them. But if they're earning if they feel it's fair, loads of cash is typically not the thing that motivates people. It's making a difference, doing something cool, something that's meaningful, and getting recognition from the people around you and feeling valued. That's why people work hard, right? And that's why they innovate. So it's part of the performance management system, but that's not the thing that makes people be good team players. That's kind of a result in the end. I think people want to be good team players because everyone else is, and we pride ourselves on it. So we keep each other accountable and kind of, it self-manages because it's so ingrained in the culture. And the only way you get there is if you live it all the time and like you stay focused on the people, and you stay caring, and you stay humble, and you stay vulnerable, and those kind of things, which isn't always easy. When you've got, as we said earlier, you've got a 2-year-old at home keeping you awake the whole night, and you've got stresses and deadlines of your own, then it's difficult. But you don't have to always get it right, but you always have to try.
Yeah. I think you a lot of that resonates, particularly having young kids too. So I hear you on that. What I also quite admire is the fact that so often, especially across an engineering-led business, that incentive is linked to something long-term, rather than you guys clearly linking bonus for every role and function to the company's success, because so often that variable component is so much more closely linked to sales. But actually, clearly, you're all contributing, in your own way, whether that be an engineer or a receptionist or a salesperson or whatever it might be. Mike, thank you for all the thoughts, comments, and engagement that you've shared. It's been fascinating. And I want to finish on one final question that we ask everybody that appears on any podcast we've recorded. So, what is the one single piece of advice that you'd give someone that is hoping to start their career in the space satellite industry?
spend your time building what the customer wants, not what you think is cool. Don't build a product that's interesting to you, or that you think is incredible, or that you think is high tech, or and that's not necessarily aligned with a real business need, and a real need from the market. Really focus on who your customer is going to be, how big the market is, and what the competitive landscape is, and make sure that you actually stay focused on the customer, not on what you personally want to do or what your VCs want to do, but what the customer needs.
Yeah, it's brilliant advice, and particularly with the nature of your business, it makes complete sense to be customer centric. And
yeah,
like Tom said, sorry.
So in the space industry, and as you said, with it being a very engineering, sciencey kind of industry, you have so many people that they're passionate about technology, right? And they've put a lot of their life into their research and into their technology, and then fundamentally they want to. They get to a point where they want to build a business around that technology. But then they don't actually consider the market or the kind of scaling mechanisms of building that thing. Operationally, what would it cost to build it? How big is the market? How big is the factory that you need? How does the supply chain look? All those kind of things. And I think very often in this industry, you have people that are just so passionate about the technology, and then starts building businesses around the technology because the technology is cool. And I think it's important just to remind them that you might be better off spending your time elsewhere, or either developing more technology or finding a variation of that is better suited for building a business and scaling a business, than spending many years on then trying to make a business from something that there just isn't a market for. I've seen so many people do that, and I just want to kind of qualify that as well. I've been involved in one business, right? I've got the experience and the skills of one business. I'm not a business guru or genius. I don't have this crazy insight for having envisioned exactly what this company is going to be. That's not me. Like I've been the person that's just grinding away at doing the right thing, every year going forward. So my advice isn't. I don't think I know better than anyone else, and I don't think that if I make another business now, it would be successful necessarily. But I have seen a lot of people make this mistake. So that's just why I just want to qualify that. I don't want to seem like I know more than others in the business.
That being said, it's valuable advice. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for appearing as a guest on this podcast. Good luck against Ireland this weekend, and a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Tom and Millie. I really appreciate this.